It is race week for the NTT IndyCar Series as they head to Texas Motor Speedway and the XPEL 375. Welcome back to another edition of the IndyCar Show here, Burnout Sports, burnoutsports.com. Don't forget to like and follow us on all of our social media. Check out our YouTube page as well. We had a great conversation earlier in the week with Miles Rowe. But let's bring in the man, Luke Edwards. Luke, how are you?
I'm ready for No Limits Texas. Well, maybe Some Limits Texas. We'll get to that in a minute. But always earmark this on the calendar. I usually try to throw a race party. It's one of the few race parties I throw a year at my house. So yeah, let's get it on. Let's go out west and hopefully throw down.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of our favorite Texas memories coming up as well because I used to love in June, it was usually a couple weeks after the 500, Saturday night race. So I do miss them racing at night. We really don't have a night race in IndyCar this year. St. Louis might finish barely under the darkness, but I do miss it at under the lights at Texas. But let's just talk about the elephant in the room, Luke. It's what's been talked about going in. It's kind of what was discussed with the test that came up last week and the rookie test is this PJ1 traction compound they lay down to make the NASCAR series, I guess, race a little bit better. And we know NASCAR kind of controls a lot more things than IndyCar does. It's a lot more money. It is what it is. Anybody listening to this probably knows that. But they are looking into a cleaner. They are looking into maybe running all 27 cars in a kind of controlled practice session with cones in that bottom lane. What are your expectations for, like you said, somewhat limits Texas coming up on Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, it looks like they're looking into some sort of acid wash. And then Will Power has been advocating for doing this full field basically test where they force the cars to run up top on the slick surface that everyone is afraid to touch with good reason because we've seen everyone that's touched it pretty much end up in the fence. So I think you can have some hesitation from at least the car owners, if not some of the drivers there that don't want to knock all four corners off the car the day before the race. However, there was also that third option that I've seen kind of flying around, and that's that they might take some sort of chain mesh or metal mesh and drag it across the PJ1. Um, I don't know what they're going to come to as far as a conclusion, but yeah, single file racing, is that what we really want in Texas? You talk about the passing zones. It used to be the entire track. Used to run 2-3 wide in the corners, sometimes even 4 wide leading up to the corner on the back stretch. It was an essential part of what this race was. The No Limits Texas, the 6-shooter guns in victory lane. It was all part of that pizzazz and that kind of edge of your seat action where you're literally holding your breath if your driver is anywhere near another driver the entire race. I really don't want to see it be a single file race because it kind of has turned into this almost Mario Kart-esque deal where, you're coming to the corner, watch out for the banana peels, and everybody just tries to dart back in line. And in some cases, it creates more dangerous situations because you get so desperate to pass at the last second.
Yeah, and really, I think you mentioned Will Power, and I think him and Graham Rahal have been the vocalists to say, "Hey, we need to do this." But then none of the teams want to step up and know that there's a potential and a possibility to wad up a car and ruin a race car. And we think back to some of the crashes that we had in 2020. I think Texas kicked off the season after the pandemic, and they ended up. I think Sato in a practice session ended up in the wall. Maybe even Alex Palou. I think Sato actually sat that race out. And then Rosenquist going for the win over Scott Dixon, his teammate at the time, ends up crashing out as well. So I don't know what they need to do, but I'm with you. I want to get back to some good racing where it's not just the only passing zone is the dog leg on the front straightaway or the backstretch. We saw a lot of guys throwing blocks from pretty much the wall down the backstretch all the way into somebody's RV there in the infield. So race control is going to have their hands full this weekend. And I don't know if you got to go back to the days when we were in Little League and you literally brought the John Deere riding lawnmower out with like the fence behind it, like you said. But I really hope that something happens to where you could stay too wide in the corners and you can make those moves because we have seen some daring moves, but you're on edge because it's like going up there and being on ice skates, basically for these cars. So hopefully they figure something out. That's still to come once they get to Texas and arrive there on Friday morning. But as always, there's a lot that goes into a race weekend, and I think of utmost importance this weekend, Luke, is where you qualify. The last 6 winners of this race all started inside of the top 10. The last 4 winners started inside those first 2 rows. Pit selection and such. But how important is it this weekend, Luke, to qualify up as far towards the front as you possibly can?
Absolutely. I think you got to be in those first 3 rows. So in your top 6 is where you're probably going to find your winner, short of all of them having some sort of calamity in the pits. So I think number one priority is qualifying. It's going to be kind of like a Formula One weekend where you've got to tune into qualifying, see how your favorite driver does. And then second to that is pit stops, because this entire race is going to be all about track position. I think if anyone pits in the top 10, I hope that broadcast booth hones in on it, make light of the pit crews. These guys could be the real make or break moments in the race. You can have your heroes right there changing your tires and fueling your car. And like you mentioned before, I think you were talking about the blend line, and you saw some action there last year as well, because you're trying to get up to speed and get back up on that banking too. So yeah, those are the two things I would be looking out for all weekend: is qualifying position and then how your pit crew is doing.
Yeah, pit crews and spotters certainly don't get the credit that they deserve. I mean, I know the driver, the first thing he thinks is the team, but of utmost importance this weekend, because as you mentioned, that blend line coming out on the back straightaway just off of turn two, we've only seen an average. We only saw 3 cautions in race two last year. The last 5 races have had an average of only 3 cautions. So, like you said, it could come down to fuel mileage. We are definitely going to see green flag stops. Can you get in, hit your marks, and get out, and then blend with somebody charging behind you? Because as a driver, and obviously I've never done it before, but I could only imagine when you're in that car and you're coming off pit road, you know that you're in the lead, and that guy who's in second or is charging hard off too, you're going to push it. Race control is going to have their hands full this weekend, because, as we mentioned, there's going to be a lot of blocks that happen, and a lot of those come in just defending your position because you're not quite up to speed after merging back after a green flag stop. So much to look for coming up this weekend down in Texas. Again, we'll have you covered here, burnoutsports.com. Follow our Twitter handles, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube if you don't mind. All right, Luke, rookies. Let's break down the rookies in the field coming up this weekend. I know everybody is excited to see oval rookies in Jimmie Johnson and Roman Grosjean. A rookie has scored a top 10 finish in 4 straight Texas races. Obviously, McLaughlin had a second attempt, but had a double weekend of top 10s last year. The rookies this weekend, who are you looking to impress the most?
Well, I mean, all eyes are going to be on Grosjean and Johnson, who's going to come out on top. And I've been kind of researching a little bit of their team experience. Obviously, Grosjean has a lot of good data under his belt with Andretti. But looking at Jimmie Johnson, who has won at Texas 7 times, granted in a cup car, but it's got to carry some moxie to have your name on that victory lane. And
Mhm.
you look at his teammates. You have Tony Kanaan, who won a race there in 2004, and then with a second place finish in the second race of that same year, clinched the championship. You look at Scott Dixon. I mean, in 23 starts, Scott Dixon has 5 wins and I want to say 10 top tens. Um, and he's completed well over 90%, 93% of the laps at Texas. So he not only knows how to win, how to stay up front in every type of IndyCar there. He's won twice in the current formula with the Aero Screen cars in the Turbo era. He's won 3 times. So I just think that experience in that pit box is going to mean so much between the two of them. And we've seen a lot of IndyCar drivers or IndyCar competitors that have come from NASCAR full time learn how to handle an IndyCar and oval pretty quick, almost at a surprising, alarming rate, like with Kurt Busch in the 500, maintaining position in the top 10 in 2014. Um, so you look at that, you look at the experience with Kanan and Dixon helping out him. I think he's the guy that's going to surprise a lot of people there.
Yeah, and 27 cars on the entry list coming up this weekend, as we know. Ed Carpenter returning to the cockpit for the first time this year, and the first time in the number 33. Obviously, Tatiana Calderon is not running, so J.R. Hildebrand, it was announced earlier this week. But as we mentioned, the importance of pit boxes, that this is going to be a crammed up track, I think, with 27 cars out there. You got to be patient, Luke, because if you're a leader, and as you mentioned earlier in the show, if you're in the top five, top six, it's pretty much where you probably stay all day. Importance of patience to be able to get through traffic, because I think we're going to see a lot of lap traffic come up and be a factor for the leaders this weekend.
Yeah, this is going to remind us, I think, a lot more of a Phoenix IndyCar race. Pick your era, because Phoenix has always been about weaving your way through the lap traffic. Can second
Mhm.
place hunt down first place, going around lap cars? So, communication between the spotters is going to be key. Communication and hitting your marks, like you said, not only in the pit lane, but also getting down out of the groove, going to be really important. And you mentioned Ed Carpenter Racing. This is the first time outside of the Indy 500 that they're going to have three cars. So, what is that going to look like? Are they going to be spread thin? Is there communication and the execution going to be there for all three of them to be successful? We know Connor can be pretty strong on an oval. Ed obviously strong on ovals. Renus too. Renus has been running up top, and he's fully back from his injury, as we've pointed out a couple times. But yeah, I think that's something to look for.
With Texas this week, as we mentioned, there has been rumors that this could be the last race down there. Milwaukee has kind of emerged as maybe a replacement. Do you think that this could be the last time we see IndyCar at Texas?
Man, it does kind of feel like a farewell, doesn't it? It
Mhm.
almost feels like a send off that none of us wanted. Um, I think so. And one of the trends that I've been noticing on social media lately, if you follow, your favorite teams and drivers, so on, um, you typically kind of get your answers in between the lines. So, one example would be when they did the polls and all the teams and drivers participated, and they were like, "What tracks do you want to see on the schedule?" And an overwhelming amount all said Milwaukee. You had team owners, Bobby Rahal, saying Milwaukee. You had, I think, five or six different drivers say they wanted to see Milwaukee back on the schedule. I don't think that's a chance thing. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's their way of trying to get people hyped up. And I don't have any insider information outside of reading the writing on the wall. They're trying to put that out there. I saw something similar with Miller High Life brand hyping up Scott McLaughlin. You don't
Mhm.
see that coming from official verified accounts, sponsors, teams, drivers, etc., unless there's some sort of smoke to that fire. Um, with that being said, what do you think about losing Texas and replacing him with Milwaukee?
Yeah, I don't think the racing was as great in the early 2010s at Milwaukee as what we had saw. I don't know if it was because of the new car, but I would say this: Milwaukee's a great track. It's a historic track. It has always been a very popular track for IndyCar. You got to look at, does it take away a little bit from some maybe fans going to Road America? I think it's about a 2.5 hour difference. Road America is more north than Milwaukee. And somebody asked me this, and I actually found out, why can't they run the IndyCar race the same weekend as the state fair? So if you've never been to Milwaukee, it is on the fairgrounds where they have the Wisconsin State Fair every year. And I was told that they won't do that because the sound of the engines scare the livestock that are there for the state fair. So they will not do that. But I would love to see Milwaukee back, but I would love to see Michigan back. I would love to see Kentucky back as well. Just those tracks that I went to as a kid. I love Milwaukee. When Andretti kind of took over there and Ryan Hunter-Ray was dominating, and they had Sundrop sponsorship and RC Cola sponsorship, and GoDaddy was sponsoring that. It wasn't the best of race, and fans just didn't show up. And we've talked about this on this show, and you could talk about it when it's kind of the devil's advocate when you talk about bringing more ovals to the schedule. Is fans simply have to show up. So let's wrap up a little bit of Texas on a more fun note, more exciting note. Give me some of your favorite memories of the past for IndyCar at Texas Motor Speedway.
I'll start with the more recent one, and that was 2016. The battle for the win between four people. You had Pagano, you had Hinch, you had Rahal, and you had Kanan. So you had four different drivers from four different teams, and just the sheer amount of contact between those guys at over 210, 215 miles an hour
Mhm.
actually slamming into each other was just remarkable. Love to see it. And then Ray Hall ultimately coming out on top. Ray Hall's always very strong at Texas, at least how Texas used to be, when you could run different lanes of the track and work your car into a groove that suited your style. Another big one for me, I talked about it a little bit earlier, was Kanan clinching the championship in '04, and he had that reverse 7-Eleven paint scheme, that green,
Yeah.
red, and white deal, just edging out Weldon, his teammate, to win the championship, and they finished 1-2 in that championship that year. So those were my two favorite drivers back in the day. I'm trying to think. I mean, honestly, when Sato tried to pull that move in the dog leg in 17, where he decided, well, I'll stick the left side wheels into the grass here to make myself a little more room, and shot into Dixon. It wasn't a good memory, but I mean, we were jumping up and down and screaming because it was kind of building up for lap after lap. Just the chaos was too much to contain. Again, back to those no limits days. I
Mhm.
know you have a few special memories of Texas as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, Thomas Schechter's won in '05 in that Pennzoil Platinum car, especially coming off of the disappointment that they had at the Indy 500 where they were taken out by Danica under yellow. I was a huge Thomas Schechter fan. I've mentioned a few times. It's kind of where I got my start in writing was his website. But that night that he won in Texas, he, hold on, gave me as a gift these gloves. These are the gloves that he wore. If you can see them, these are the gloves that he wore that night. And it's funny because, and I'll tweet this out on at Tony D Indy. There is a full onboard camera of that race of Schechter, and it goes. I was like, okay, you could watch it over and over and over. But what was fascinating for me was the camera still rolls when he does his burnouts. He does an extra victory lap. He brings it in victory circle. So I was really excited for Schechter. Then obviously Ed Carpenter's win, but you just think about just the shootouts at Texas, for lack of a better word, down the stretch, and Hornish's win when he had the American flag on the back of his or on his engine cowling was a great memory as well. So hopefully we can continue to talk about Texas, and this won't be the last race there for IndyCar. All right, Luke, I know this is something that you have been wanting to talk about, and we've kind of dove into the rumor mill a little bit on where, silly season almost already starting for 2023. Colton Herta, the news with McLaren F1, he'll get a test. Your initial thoughts on this move between Zach Brown and Colton Herta's camp to get him into a cockpit, hopefully by season's end.
Well, right off the bat, just look at where we've come in IndyCar racing in the sport. We weren't talking about great IndyCar drivers or winning IndyCar drivers getting a chance to run an F1. We haven't talked about that since what? Juan Pablo Montoya, and that was during the split era. So, pre-split, you're looking at Jacques Villeneuve. This is huge. I mean, if IndyCar drivers are getting noticed by F1 teams, then F1 fans are noticing IndyCar. and they have for quite some time. The racing is better in IndyCar, quite frankly. We'll have to see this Sunday how the new car helps F1, but really, as far as this move, you're looking at, I think, a kind of a friendship between Zach Brown and Michael Andretti, who have worked together
Mhm.
before in 2017 with Alonso and McLaren as they started making their foray into IndyCar racing and had a good shot at winning the 500. Um, it's putting Colton in a position to get his super license points to be eligible to run in Formula One, and it unfortunately kind of puts Pato seemingly a step back. They were going to use those FP1 opportunities to try to gain him a spot, to try to get him a super license. And he needed, I think, a few more top three finishes in IndyCar to, in addition to that. So is he essentially taking all that guaranteed FP1 time away from Pato Award? It kind of looks like it. Now, does that mean that McLaren is going to be looking at Herta? That I'm unsure about because you also have Andretti kind of vying for a 2024 Formula One debut with their own team.
Yeah, and then the dominoes start to fall for IndyCar. It's like, okay, is Rossi going to be leaving at the end of the year? And if Pato is gone, does he move over to McLaren? Does that open up a spot for somebody like Kyle Kirkwood to take over? Is maybe Christian Rasmussen ready to go, or maybe even Matty Brabham, as we saw, who won the first lights race? So there is a lot that I think comes down, and honestly, this is kind of the first domino to fall a little bit because, as you've mentioned before, there's smoke, there's fire. Andretti wants to go to Formula One. I think Gamebridge wants to back that as much as they can, and Gamebridge wants Colton Herta to be in that car. I mean, I'm sure it'll be a two-car operation. And you mentioned this too, I think, on the last show, Luke, is do they take Grosjean with them? So there is just so much that kind of goes into this that as IndyCar fans, I think we all feel the same. Like, hey, we don't want to see Colton go or Pato go, but this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And, hopefully there's a lot of success that comes, especially for Herta, because we haven't seen an American have a lot of success in Formula One in the last, I don't know, 25, 30 years, if not longer. And with that being said, too, it's like, okay, you can always come back and run another 8 to 10 Indy 500s. These are very, very young guys that are going to go make this jump. So you have to make that jump if you get the opportunity to do so. All right, this came down earlier this week to Luke. NBC will have post race coverage on Peacock. You preached about this, I think, in maybe the opening episode of being able to show the podium, being able to show the celebration, interview more drivers. They listened to you, Luke. Your thoughts on Peacock now having a little bit of a post race show? It looks like it's going to be somewhere around 25 to 30 minutes.
It was obviously all me. So you're welcome, everyone.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to have any sporting event. Like, what sporting event have you ever watched where you watch the teams go to battle or the players go to battle, somebody comes out victorious, and then you have a loser, and then it's just golf? I mean, it's just bizarre to me that we thought that this was sustainable and that it was allowed to go on for so long. Um, yeah, I want to not only hear from the winner, but I want to hear from second place. I want to hear the guys in the booth break it down. Like, it's only as big of a deal as you make of it. If you ran the Indy 500 and had the same sort of coverage around it, eventually it would start to not seem that big of a deal as generations passed on and new generations came up. So if you make a big deal about winning a race or losing a race, that means that it matters. Just like showing the podium, I can't tell you how long I'm getting flustered even talking about it. How many years before I even worked in the sport, I was like, why do they not make a big deal about victory lane? Why do they not make a big deal about the podium? And then you might see a picture of it later on individuals' social media channels. Beats me, but hopefully they do it right. Hopefully they make it big. and we can really feel the amount of effort and relief and elation that comes with victory in IndyCar racing, the same way that we do in every other sport that's half as dangerous and takes half the courage that this does.
And I hope for the sake, and maybe this is just me and a personal preference, but and I don't think it's happened yet. But please, if you win a race, any IndyCar drivers watch this. If you win a race, do your burnouts because burnoutsports.com likes to cover that. But also go straight to victory circle. I don't like the NASCAR. The guy gets out of the car and goes grabs a checkered flag and they do an interview. Then they grab an interview 5 minutes later in victory circle. I think I like to have that pure emotion. First time out of the car, your crew's around you celebrating. But yeah, as you mentioned, great for Peacock. It really makes if you didn't already think it was a value at $5, which it certainly is. It brings more value to your purchase. I hope they don't jack the prices up by $4 or $5 because of this. And I hope that fans will tune in. I hope that this means that fans will pay for Peacock and then tune in to watch this because everything is watched from directors, from executives, the series, NBC Sports. They're going to look at the numbers and say, okay, this was worth it for us. Let's continue to do this. Or, you know what? Kind of like ovals, people didn't show up after they said that they were going to and wanted to. I was at St. Pete, went to the post race press conference, and I would like to see that covered as well. I mean, Will Power had some great quotes on some things. You can go back and listen to that. We won't get into it, but there is still a lot that goes on after the race. And as you mentioned, I don't want to see them get preempted where they, cricket run or lacrosse runs late. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, well, hey, we're going green because so I just hope the timing works out with the broadcast windows. It didn't as much as it should have last year, but kudos to Peacock, NBC Sports for making this happen. All right, a guy that you were with here recently, somebody that everybody knows has a new book out called The Checkered Pass, is Al Unser Jr. He was on the Dale Jr. download. He talked about his struggles with racing, got very in depth. I thought that it was a great conversation because, Dale Jr., Al Jr., they know what it's like to have to perform in their sport with having their dad be so successful. But I just thought it was a great conversation. He was open and honest. He's obviously been in some trouble in the past. It seems like things are going well for Al. But just some of your reactions to what he had to say and where he is today that we're all very happy to see.
Well, yeah, I was just with him tonight, and Christy Lee. So we did a speaker series at the museum. It's one of those things where you do get a member benefit. It's a little bit cheaper to go as a member, in other words. But yeah, we had several people show up. Actually, a fairly robust crowd showed up. Um, Everyone's eager to hear about his book, and I'm sure that the book, like he said, is kind of therapeutic for him. Holding all that stuff in and keeping everything private when you're struggling with things. In my own experience, it can make it a lot worse. So this tell-all book that he wrote with Jade Gurst, who also wrote the Beast book on the 1994 Mercedes Ilmor Secret Engine that won the 500, which is a book I'm in the middle of right now. Great writing.
Mhm.
It's getting rave reviews. I haven't gotten a chance to even get my hands on a copy yet. I'm gonna do that as soon as possible. But yeah, on the Dale Jr. download, he really kind of dove into his personal life, and what I really liked were his insights into his childhood.
Mhm.
Just talking about the contrast of going from living like a king with his mom, but he wanted to race so badly. He had that fever so bad that he went and lived with his dad so that he could do that. And his dad put him to work. He didn't
Mhm.
give him any time to rest, no idle hands. Um, and then just kind of leading up to his struggles, which really came to fruition after his fame. And then, as he talks about after the getting bumped out of the 500 in 1995, he said is where it really kind of took hold and started going downhill. But it was great to see him. He's in good spirits now. He's recently married, so he had his new wife and her family out with him tonight. It was just good to see him, and I told him I hope that we can do some more stuff together soon. He's always around town, so yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see he's doing well. I mean, I was the kid that had the Al Jr. shirt on, and he threw me his hat there when his return came in 2000 for that 500, I believe. And I've talked to Al many times. So actually, we did a walk around the museum together for when I was working in radio, and we did a video. And what, like you mentioned, that he gave insight to this child, that he told me that in 70 and 71, he remembers going to the local movie theater and they played the race on closed circuit television to be able to watch that. So it's great to see that he is coming face to face with the demons that he's had. He's growing, he's moving forward, and I think he's got a birthday coming up at the end of April. So check out the book if you would like. But yeah, and he's doing some stuff with some up and coming drivers. So great things for Al Jr. And maybe Luke will have to get him here on the IndyCar Show podcast. All right, I kind of want to merge these two together if you don't mind. Everybody in the world just blows up my DMs and other people's in the world to know what the Carb Day concert is going to be. We do know this. Hy-Vee's Super Weekend going to be awesome. 2 races, 250 and 300 laps. Gwen Stefani, Florida Georgia Line, Tim McGraw, and Blake Shelton are going to be performing. But IndyCar fans love to bitch. They're always going to bitch about something, and they don't like the prices being so high to go to a race. But I like that they're doing something. That they see that sometimes in the past, I just talked about it 10 minutes ago with Milwaukee, people don't show up. So we'll just see what it does. But I like having these big name concerts involved in racing. And if Blake Shelton, who's got like 30 billion Twitter followers and Instagram followers, tweets and posts about that, holy crap, how is that a bad thing? I'm sorry that Jim over in Speedway had to pay an extra $25 for his ticket. I understand that times are tough and gas is really expensive, but these corporations, these sponsors, they want the most of their value and the money they're putting into it. So I am totally okay with this. Your thoughts on just Hy-Vee kind of stepping up and bringing the Super Weekend and bringing some brand name, I think, recognizable figures to perform concerts and be there and take it all in.
Yeah, we talked about the whole is B2B the right way to be for IndyCar. I guess it was about a week and a half ago on the last show. And Hy-Vee is really standing out as that front runner that's like, listen, we can still do the tried and true method of getting these people's names out there, getting the athletes' names back in the public eye. Like they have the cardboard cutouts everywhere, all over their stores. Keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And now we have social media. So yeah, bringing these. I do have one question. Is Gwen Stefani married to Blake Shelton?
Yes, yes, yes. I believe they met
That's
on
a
one of
shame
those.
because I mean, I
Well,
was
she was
really
married
my
to.
hopes were up to meet her.
Well, you could still meet her. You just might have to, pick your tongue
I
up
just
off the
can't marry
ground.
her.
That yes, but
Yeah.
I'll say yeah, and obviously I think Blake still does a show on NBC and Gwen's on it. I don't know. I don't watch that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but I love it. Look, I think that they're gonna blow it out this year for Carb Day. I've heard rumors of Kiss. I've heard rumors of Red Hot Chili Peppers. Either way, those I don't know why I said it that way. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Either way, those are big names, and I think that the Speedway is going to have a huge name on the Carb Day concert because they've already moved that Saturday concert down to a different venue downtown, which I think is great. Helps a lot of the workers, the track people that clean it up, that are there. Oh, we're going to give you this big concert, and then oh, by the way, you're going to go home and sleep for 4 hours and come back, and it's the biggest sporting event in the world. So I like what they're kind of doing. I hope that means it's going to be a bigger Friday afternoon when it comes to Carb Day. But everybody all the time, Luke, I'm sure you get it. They always mention, oh, what's going to be the Carb Day concert? Who's it going to be? We will see the XPEL 375 coming up just after 12:30 Eastern time on Sunday. We'll have you covered here, burnoutsports.com. Don't forget to check out the latest show, well, the one before this, which is with Miles Rowe. We appreciate his time. That was a great conversation. If you haven't caught up on that, be sure to do so. Luke, give them your Twitter account so they can follow you throughout the weekend as we follow along this race coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, my brand new Twitter is Luke Edwards Indy. Same with my Instagram as well. So I'll be active on Twitter during the race. Be sure to give me a follow. Don't look at my follower numbers yet. It's really sad, but
We're getting
we'll get
there.
there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. It takes time. That is for sure. All right. Thanks again for listening to the IndyCar show here, burnoutsports.com. Tony Donahue, Luke Edwards. Enjoy the race coming up this weekend.